Wow, after he looks down for 40 minutes. You were checking what, the weather? Yeah? Okay. Well, we have Talyn Saleeb here to speak about if you love me, yeah, my wife, keep my commandments.
Lucky. But I love it. It's so
Yeah, sorry, move it away, it's very sensitive.
loud. I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't like microphones. There's no microphones in my classroom. Welcome to Interactive Teaching 101. Hashtag technology in the classroom. Did you do it? It's not there. If you didn't do it, it's not there.
Wait, are we only allowed to put one word?
I think it's either one word or a sentence you can do. 3 words is the max. Does it? I saw it in one of my professional development things, thought it was cool, decided to use it. Welcome to my ability to plan things. It's how I run my life. Yeah, if you want. Kind of. I'm just waiting. I don't like talking into microphones, so. No. It's menti.com and my code will get them to answer the question. So we can all be interactive and engaged learners in this current talk. Teaching has infected my life. And Bassem said to give it 5 minutes. So maybe stop the live stream if you want it. See, it's only really cool when there's like 20 people because it fills up really fast. So it's pretty ironic that I've been given this topic, considering that my entire life revolves around telling people what to do that are younger than me and trying to foster obedience in school children. One of the things that I notice about my job is most of my teenagers have an inherent distrust of me. They think I'm the bad guy. Anytime I tell them to do anything, it usually comes with some kind of a fight. Pick up that piece of paper off the floor, no. And I've kind of figured out what it is. So why I got this up for you to do is I quite like interactive talks, or if we're going to say lessons, let's do lessons, since that's what I do with my life. And this particular medium allows you to interact with me without actually having to talk to me. And I find that most 21st century people don't like talking or answering questions or putting their hand up and giving their opinions anymore. So this negates the whole need for you to actually talk to me. So the talk is, if you love me, keep my commandments. Why I brought up my school experience as my first kind of point, it almost creates the perfect example of God and us. My students have a need of me. Okay, I'm supposed to be teaching them. I'm supposed to be bringing them into their adulthood by educating them with the subjects that I have. It's my role. Okay, they have to be in my classroom at least once a week. Most of my kids see me 3 or 4 times a week. They need stuff from me. But as I said before, they have this inherent distrust of me. I tell them, can you please go and do this for me? Or can you pick this up? Or can you do this? I give them things that they need to obey, and they don't want to do it. And why most of the time they don't want to do it is they don't understand that I'm doing it out of love. They are looking at me as a big dictator in their life. I spoil all their fun. I don't want them to have any fun because I make them pick up papers and I make them write things down and learn things. Apparently, I'm the fun police. But a discussion I actually had with some of my year 11s today was, I'm doing this out of love. Yes, I'm being paid to do this, but I didn't have to pick this profession. And I don't have to treat you the way that I do in my classroom. I'm pretty fair, pretty relaxed. And most of the time, my orders are not ridiculous. Respect the people around you, respect my classroom, respect me. It's very simple. And yet, time and time again, they have trouble with it. And my kids come from all walks of life. So I have kids that come from abusive households. I have kids that are poor. I have kids that are rich. I have kids that, the cultural divide between us and them is huge. They don't understand half the stuff that's going on in my classroom. And they all struggle with obedience. So that's why I start with the idea that it's pretty ironic that I have to do this talk. And I like to think that it's God giving me my own message. So what does obedience mean to you? We've put up things like listening to elders, listening to others, accepting, submission through love, observance of the rules, listening, respect. All these nice positive words that we throw around, especially at school as well, that want to positively engage you with this idea that obeying equals love. Okay? And I'll just get up my PowerPoint. So, if you love me, follow my commandments, okay? You are all now Christians on a voluntary basis, okay? You've reached that age where you are no longer being dragged to where you are supposed to be, which is here. No one's telling you to come, so you're all volunteered for this, okay? And one of the things that we struggle most with in our spiritual life is this idea of obedience and following the commandments. Yes, I'm talking about the 10 Commandments, but I'm also talking about all the stuff that Christ preached in the New Testament as well. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, basically like the Beatitudes and so forth. Okay? So you all chose to be here, you all chose to be part of this church, and you all chose to accept Christ as your Saviour, and yet we struggle with following the commandments. So the key to spiritual growth really is obedience. And it's something we all struggle with. I struggle with it on a daily basis. My confession father for years has been telling me to do a certain number of things, still can't do it, can't be obedient towards it. Okay? Even being obedient in terms of just making sure that I go to the gym every week is a real struggle. Okay? And in John, it says, "He who has my commandments and keeps them is he who loves me and will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. If a man loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him, and we will come and make our home with him. And he who does not love me does not keep my words, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me." So if we bring it back to my example of my lovely classroom, where my kids have an inherent distrust of me and don't understand that I love them and do what I do out of love, they're not abiding by my word. They're not going to get what they need out of it. Okay? So in your Christianity and in your spiritual life, it really should be all about obedience. And it is a very hard concept to struggle with. Okay? Because as humans, we have ego. And ego tells me that, no, you shouldn't be allowed to tell me what to do. I should be able to decide for myself. Okay? The Holy Orthodox Christian tradition basically states that obedience is a virtue. It's to the Lord, to the gospel, and to your church. To the leaders of your church, parents and elders, to every ordinance of man. Okay? The first set of people you were obedient to were your parents. Your parents cared for you, your parents loved you, and they had rules, and you had to follow them. Okay? So my purpose in this talk is trying to get you not to just understand that you have to be obedient in all aspects of life. It's trying to wake you up to where are you not being obedient in your spiritual life, and how can you fix that? So I'm not going to have some magical fix for you or some magical conclusion that's going to make you think, wow, now my eyes are open and I know how to do everything. I'm trying to get you to think with this talk. That's all I ever do. Promote people to try and think a little bit more. Be the catalyst for possibly a change in your life. Especially 1 week, well, technically we just finished preparation week, so Lent's officially starting next week. And now's the time to maybe adopt a new spiritual rule. Okay? And you have obedience to one another out of reverence for Christ. For there is no spiritual life without obedience, no freedom or liberation from sinful passions and lusts. To submit to God's discipline in all of its human form is the only way to obtain the glorious liberty of the children of God. Okay? Submission, obedience. Again, all terms we're not really happy to do. If I walk up to you and say, "Christian, can you go be submissive to Mark?" He's not going to be very happy about doing that. Okay? So it's something that you're constantly going to have to understand is going to be a struggle in your spiritual life, to follow and keep these commandments that you've been given. But if you acknowledge the struggle, it does make it a little bit easier. Okay? So, by definition, as Orthodox Christians, we are ones who strive to be obedient to the commandment, at the same time obediently tries to fulfill the requirements of an Orthodox Christian way of life, which has been revealed to us by the Holy Scripture. Anybody else notice that now this Lent we literally have a vegan replacement for everything that we always desired during Lent? Convenient? Probably not. There seems to be now, I can get ice cream, I can get meat, I can get everything that I want in a convenient vegan replacement that will make my fasting a breeze. Not really the struggle that it's supposed to be. And it's not really following the requirements of an Orthodox Christian life. We can argue till the cows come home about whether or not vegan food is actually legitimate in fasting. Abuna or other people might say it tastes like rubbish, so it doesn't really matter. But what the church tells us to do is to stay away from certain products. And in our obedience, we should be staying away from meat and dairy and doing all those things in order to be Christian. And in order to strive to be in that Christian life. But it's not as simple as just following all the rules, because you can follow all the rules of church perfectly and still be a terrible Christian. Okay? I fast, I pray 4 times a day, I do this and I do that. And in your obedience, you're following the rules, but not being obedient to the essence of Christianity. You gossip about your workmates. You are unable to love your enemies. You can't find it in your heart to forgive someone who's wronged you. Okay? So it's these commandments that I'm bringing up as the ones that we should be obedient towards. Okay? Yes, we've got our original 10, and they're great commandments, but there are more commandments in Christianity that we really need to strive to be obedient towards in our life. And in that obedience, you are showing love. Okay? My parents, I showed them love by obeying their rules. At a time when I couldn't really express my love properly. Now I can go up to my mother and say, I love you, Mum. I really appreciate what you did for me, all that kind of stuff. But in my infancy, in my younger years, I wasn't able to do that. How I showed my mother and my father that I loved them was I made sure that whatever rules they gave me, I tried to follow to a T. And whenever I slipped up, I was very upset about it. For fear of punishment, but also for fear that my parents wouldn't love me as much. And it's that concept that you should really, I'm not going to say adapt to your Christianity, but it should be that I do this out of love for Christ. Not because these are a set of rules that I was given that I need to follow. It's not a simple checklist of things that I have to tick off and say, yes, I fasted, yes, I prayed, yes, I went to two liturgies in a week, I should make it to heaven. But I still continue to gossip about my workmates. I can't forgive that person who wronged me 10 years ago, stole my pen. Okay? And this is why I have this slide up here. And I'm hoping to get a little bit of interaction from you. What are we called to abide by or abide to? So what is these commandments that we're supposed to be abiding to? What was like Jesus selling, basically? Any ideas? Now you have to talk to me. And I'm really good at the waiting game, guys. I do 55 minutes of waiting game. Jonah? So what are we called to abide to? So Jesus has called us to be saved, to be Christians. What are we supposed to be putting back into that? What are the commandments that Christ, for example, gave us? Pray, fast. Yeah, so that's the Orthodox Church giving us pray, fast, attend liturgies, the base model of what you need to do, yeah? But in the Bible, what did Jesus do? What's the Bible a story of? Love each other. Anything? Mm-hmm. So he gave us a lot of parables that had certain themes or ideas in them that were teaching us that, yes, it's a good idea to forgive people. Yes, it's a good idea to be ready. Yes, it's a good idea to do X, Y, Z. So that's really good. Anyone else have anything to add? No? Happy to move on. Okay. So who is our greatest example? And I'd like to draw your attention to the picture at the back of my slide. That is at, I think it's station number 4 of Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem. 4 or 5, I can't remember. Where Christ fell for the 3rd time. So what is in Jerusalem, along the path that Christ walked to the crucifixion, there's a whole bunch of little chapels. I think there's 8 of them, because 9, 10... and the rest of them are in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, but I can't remember for the life of me. And they have these little chapels that are where they historically think these events took place. Okay? And I've always loved this statue. I'm not supposed to like statues because we're Orthodox, but it's fine. Because it is a very poignant example of how obedient Christ was. If you think back to what's about to come up, which is Passion Week, and you think back to the Thursday night, just before Christ is about to be betrayed, he knows he's going to be betrayed. He knows what's about to happen to him. And he knows that this is going to hurt a lot. He knows he's going to be suffering. It's not going to be a walk in the park, a piece of cake. And he even prays and asks for it to be taken away from him. And in his obedience, he goes forward. Because out of his love, he knew we needed to be saved. And it's the same, like, I'm not comparing myself in any way to Christ, but it's the same in my classroom. My kids give me a hard time every day. Whether it's gossiping, whether it's being mean, it's being rude to me, doing all these things. And out of love, I push through and I continue to teach them. And I try to teach them obedience. Because that's what really the school system's all about. It's making sure that they're relatively obedient and able to engage and learn things. And Christ pushed through in all of his trials and tribulations in his obedience. So my little thing there is all that Jesus has and is, he has received from God the Father and from all eternity. The Son has listened to the Father in order to do his work and to accomplish his will. The will of God is that the Son should become man, take up the sins of the world and die in the flesh in order to raise the dead, that nothing would be lost. Jesus has accomplished this divine and perfect obedience, giving an example to all. Church is never going to be easy. Getting up in the morning and praying is never going to be easy. Adhering to the commandments that we've been given in love is never going to be easy. Never. There is people who are just there, they're going to annoy you and they're going to tempt you into being the worst version of yourself possible. Classic example, there's a particular person at work I can't stand. And yet I breathe deeply and try to find my Christianity every time I talk to her. Because I'm trying to be obedient. It's not easy. It's just like, sometimes I wonder, was this person put here to test me? Because every single thing she does annoys me. But I try to, in that obedience. It's not going to be easy to get up for the 5 to 7 Mass if you need to add that extra Mass into your day. You're going to find every excuse under the sun not to pray that day. I'm busy, I'm doing this, okay? And there is no shame in obedience. My kids laugh at the kids that listen to me. They do. Oh, teacher's pet, still a thing. I can't believe it. After 10 years I finished school and teacher's pet is still a thing. And they really, really degrade those kids that try to build relationships with us and try to be good and obedient. And that shouldn't be. I shouldn't be ashamed to be obedient to my religion. I shouldn't be ashamed to be obedient to Christ and his commandments, because really I should love him enough that I should be able to do this. Okay? It's almost the highest form of dignity to have some level of obedience. Okay? And we know that Jesus himself, as I was saying before, although he was the Son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and being made perfect, he became the source of salvation to all who obey him. Okay? My last slide is for you to think about. What can you do to be more obedient to Christ's commandments, to the 10 commandments, to any commandments? What in your life do you think is your weakness? I don't need answers. This is for you to think about. Okay? But something that I wanted to draw your attention to is one of the easiest ways to be obedient in your spiritual life is to think about how obedient are you in church? How obedient are you to your elders? Are you obedient to your service? This year's theme of Sunday school is discipline. And discipline and obedience go hand in hand. You find that a lot of people struggle to come to church on the Sunday for Sunday school. Is that showing your obedience to your servant and your servant's service? It's a concept that has to be learnt. And I know as soon as you all finish school, you kind of threw the classic example of obedience out the window because you were done. No one can control me no more. Teachers can't tell me what to do. But in your spiritual life, you should really bring it back. Okay? I have a little paragraph here where it says, obedience is not the obligation of an inferior laity or lower clergy, but a requirement of all faithful Christians, whether they are ordained or not. In the history of Christianity, centuries of institutionalism and clericalism, followed by a lay revolution in conservatism and anti-hierarchical church, have rendered concepts of authority and obedience problematic at the point of contention and almost disdain. We don't like authority. We struggle against it. Okay, and the church struggles against it. But it is your duty as a Christian and a requirement of all faithful to be obedient. Okay? And together, through that obedience, we can become this living body of Christ. And you'll find that life becomes a little bit easier. You're no longer annoyed at the tunt that won't be quiet, or the person who skipped in line at the canteen. Because once obedience is learnt in one aspect of your life, you find it's very easy to apply it to all others. Okay? I have one more or two more little mentee things I want you to do. So this is what we got to the end of for obedience. I would like you to give this one a go. So it says, list 3 words you would use to describe love. It's completely anonymous, it's fine. Yes. I'm going to screenshot this and put it on the group, by the way, ladies. Nope. This is not Kahoot. So we've had words like sacrifice, obedience, God, Jesus, purity, service, selflessness, submission, giving. Because I'm a person in the youth group. Okay, and then, so why I got you to do this is because a lot of the words that we put in our description of love are inherently linked to the idea of obedience and following commandments. So if you love Christ, you should be able to be obedient towards the commandments. It's an inherent link. And again, one of the things I am going to say, it's not easy. I can't do it. I can barely do it. I don't know many people that can. But it is something that you can always strive towards. And God sees you striving. You're never going to attain perfect spirituality. Some of my favorite priests and, bishops that I know are not attaining perfect spirituality. Monks and nuns. No one is perfect. But it's in that struggle to be obedient that you are showing Christ that you love them. And I have one more to do, and then we are all done, ladies and gentlemen. So my last one, actually we did this one already, don't worry. Yeah. Alrighty, so That's all I have for tonight. I'm all about short and sweet. The third one I realised we did vocally. I forgot. Does anyone have any questions? I hope not, because I can't answer them. Classic. Hold on.
You mentioned at the beginning that similarly, like you kind of compared our relationship to Christ to your relationship with your parents, or anyone's relationship with their parents, in that now you're here kind of voluntarily, you're here because you want to be here, but in your infancy or in your younger years, you're there out of like not wanting to disappoint them or whatever it might be. But I think I find a lot of the time that that thought process translates even to adulthood. Like, yes, I'm voluntarily here, but sometimes it's that fear of like, what if it's all, like, almost like, what if it's all true? Like, I hope it's all true, but what if it's all true, and in order to get to heaven, I have to be at Passion Week every day. I have to be here until 11:30. I have, like, there are certain check boxes. How do you move away from that? Or is that necessary? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the check boxes, and I'm pretty sure one of Josh is going to come and stone me for my opinion, but that's fine. I think the check boxes are there to get you started on a road towards almost making your own check boxes. So you start praying, and your confession father, when maybe you were in like year 6 or year 7, was like, now it's time, you got to pray, you got to read the Bible pretty seriously, you've got to come to confession every 3 to 4 months, you need to be attending church, you need to be going to Sunday school, you need to be doing all these things. And in its initial phase, you know, you have to start somewhere. I give a kid an assignment and I can't just dump it onto them week 1, day 1. I have to build to it. So I find that the check boxes are necessary, but moving away from that concept is difficult, but it's doable. So it's not to say that you need to completely obliterate, you know, the idea that I need to come to church every week and I need to pray and I need to do all these things in order to make it to heaven. It's about finding what draws you into the church. So, for example, up until maybe 3, 4 years ago, I didn't really enjoy liturgies. I didn't see the point in them. I would attend, I would go every Sunday, I had Sunday school, I had service. You know, I got to the point where I was driving my own car, but I was still going, but I didn't really enjoy them. Because I found I couldn't connect to a lot of the singing. I found them to be long, I found them to be a bit boring. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago. And then something switched. Whether it was because I got more involved in service, or I got involved in particular services, or it was because of my first trip to Jerusalem, where suddenly liturgies became interesting, and I was starting to feel something in liturgies. I was starting to enjoy them. I was starting to go, you know what, if I go one Sunday without one, I feel like something's gone wrong or something is missing. And, you know, we can consider attending liturgy every Sunday as a checkbox. You know, mum and dad go, I should go, I've been going since I was a child. I'll just go, kind of vaguely pay attention and get through it in my obedience. But I found through certain experiences that I started to like it. I still struggle with a lot of the other checkboxes that we've been given, and I still struggle on a daily basis with my spirituality. But I found something in my church life that I really enjoy doing. And as I started enjoying it more and more, I started learning more and more about it. I started attending a lot more of them. I started being able to actually recognize and sing a lot of the hymns that previous years I was disconnected to. So I think to answer your question, it's just about finding almost like your niche in church. It's not to say that because now I love liturgies, I'm going to heaven. But I find it a bit easier to do all those other things because I found something to connect to. And sometimes that's missing from when you were a child because it's not your own fault. It's hard to build connections to things. I see it every day. Two perfectly normal kids that could be really good friends just can't build that connection. Any other questions? Did I confuse you all? Considering changing to another religion yet? Awesome.
I think we can all thank Talyn for this beautiful talk. Announcements. First and foremost. Sorry? Yeah, John Farrer. Maybe you do the poster right next.